In the quiet ranch country of Crystal Valley, Kansas, when millionaire Franklin Cooper's prized Mustang Thunder vanished during a devastating storm, he made an impossible offer: his entire $50 million fortune for whoever could bring the stallion home alive. Professional search teams, helicopters, and expert trackers all failed. But sometimes, the most extraordinary discoveries come from the most unexpected places. And what 11-year-old Natalyia Ramos would find hidden deep within the treacherous rabbit hole cave network would not only save a magnificent animal's life, but transform an entire community's understanding of courage, wisdom, and the unbreakable bonds between those who truly see each other's hearts. Quick pause before we continue. Tell us, where in the world are you watching from? If you're enjoying these stories, make sure to hit subscribe because tomorrow's episode is absolutely mind-blowing. The morning of April 15th dawned with an ominous copper sky that stretched endlessly across the Kansas prairie. Franklin Cooper stood on the wrap-around porch of his ranch house, coffee mug in hand, watching dark clouds gather on the western horizon. At 58, he had weathered countless storms on his 15,000-acre spread. But something about this one felt different. The air carried an electric tension that made his prize stallion, Thunder, pace restlessly in the main corral. "Salvador, better get the horses into the barn," Franklin called to his ranch foreman, who was already heading toward the stables with purposeful strides. "Already on it, boss," Salvador Ortiz replied, his weathered face creased with concern. "Weather Service is calling for severe thunderstorms with possible tornadoes. This one's going to be a doozy." Franklin nodded, watching as Salvador and the other ranch hands began moving the horses to safety. Thunder, a magnificent black stallion with a white blaze down his face, seemed particularly agitated. The horse had been Franklin's constant companion for the past 8 years, ever since his wife Margaret had passed away from cancer. Thunder had been her final gift to him, a young colt she'd chosen just weeks before her death. 20 meters away, in the cramped but tidy single-wide trailer she shared with her grandmother, 11-year-old Natalyia Ramos pressed her face against the window, watching the same threatening sky. The Shady Grove Mobile Park sat in a low-lying area near Crystal Creek where 37 families made their homes in aging trailers. "Abuela," Natalyia said in Spanish, turning to her grandmother, who was preparing their simple dinner of beans and rice. The sky looked scary. Pilar Sandoval, 67 years old, with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, glanced up from the stove. She had raised Natalyia since the girl was 3, after her son Carlos died in a construction accident. Despite their poverty, Pilar had instilled in her granddaughter a sense of dignity and hope. "Storms pass, Mika," Pilar replied gently, stirring the pot. "But we must always be prepared and trust in God's protection." Natalyia nodded, though her attention remained fixed on the increasingly turbulent sky. She had always felt a strange connection to weather patterns and animals, an intuition that her grandmother attributed to having been born during a thunderstorm. While other children played video games, Natalyia spent her time observing the behavior of stray cats, injured birds, and the occasional deer that wandered into their neighborhood. The first crack of thunder rolled across the valley at 6:30 that evening. By 7:00, the wind was howling with such ferocity that it rattled every window in the Cooper ranch house. Salvador had secured all the horses except Thunder, who had broken free from his stall and disappeared into the storm. "Where could he have gone?" Franklin shouted over the roar of wind and rain, pulling on his yellow rain slicker. "Maybe toward the creek," Salvador called back, grabbing his own rain gear. "He drinks there sometimes when he's upset." Norman Black, the 71-year-old veteran ranch hand who had worked for Franklin's father, shook his graying head. "That horse is too smart to stay out in this weather. Something spooked him real good." The three men spent the next 4 hours searching in conditions that grew increasingly dangerous. Lightning illuminated the landscape in brief, stark flashes, revealing a world transformed by wind and rain. Fence posts had been uprooted. Several outbuildings had lost their roofs, and Crystal Creek had swollen to 3 times its normal size. "We need to call off the search," Salvador finally yelled over the storm's fury. "This is getting too dangerous." Franklin's heart sank as they returned to the ranch house, soaked and exhausted. Thunder had never disappeared like this before. The stallion was more than just valuable livestock. He was Franklin's last living connection to Margaret. Dawn revealed the full extent of the storm's devastation. Trees had been uprooted throughout the valley. Power lines were down across 3 counties, and Crystal Creek had flooded several roads. But Franklin's immediate concern was finding Thunder. "I'm calling in professional help," he announced to Salvador and Norman over breakfast. "Kevin Wood is the best tracker in 3 states. If anyone can find Thunder, it's him." Kevin Wood arrived that afternoon in a dust-covered pickup truck, accompanied by his search dog, a German shepherd named Ranger. At 42, Kevin had spent 20 years tracking everything from lost hikers to escaped convicts. His reputation for finding the unfindable was legendary throughout the Midwest. "Tell me about the horse's behavior patterns," Kevin said, unloading his equipment. "Where does he go when he's stressed or afraid?" Franklin described Thunder's preferences: high ground during storms, the cottonwood grove near the creek for shade, the north pasture where Margaret used to take him for training sessions. Kevin listened intently, making notes and studying topographical maps of the area. "We'll start with a grid search of his usual haunts," Kevin explained. "Ranger here has an excellent success rate with large animals." For 3 days, Kevin and his team searched methodically. They found hoof prints that led to the creek, then disappeared in the muddy chaos left by the flood. They discovered broken fence rails that suggested Thunder had passed through. But the trail always went cold in the rocky terrain near Sunset Bluff Canyon. "It's like he vanished into thin air," Kevin admitted on the 4th day, his frustration evident. "I've never seen anything like it." Franklin stood in his living room that evening, staring at a framed photograph of Margaret brushing Thunder's coat. The horse's gentle eyes seemed to look directly at him, and suddenly Franklin made a decision that would shock everyone who knew him. The next morning, Franklin Cooper called a press conference in the town square of Crystal Valley. Word spread quickly through the small community of 8,000 residents, and by noon, a crowd had gathered around the gazebo where Franklin stood with a portable microphone. "Many of you know about my missing stallion, Thunder," Franklin began, his voice carrying clearly across the square. "What you don't know is what that horse means to me. He was my wife, Margaret's final gift, and losing him feels like losing her all over again." The crowd murmured sympathetically. Most residents knew about Margaret Cooper's battle with cancer and Franklin's devotion to her memory. "I'm hereby offering a reward for Thunder's safe return," Franklin continued, pausing for dramatic effect. My entire fortune, $50 million, to whoever brings my horse home alive and unharmed. The reaction was immediate and electric. Gasps rippled through the crowd, followed by excited whispers and shouts of disbelief. Billy Matthews, a young reporter from the regional newspaper, pushed forward. "Mr. Cooper, did you say 50 million?" Billy asked, his voice pitched high with excitement. "You heard correctly," Franklin replied firmly. "Every penny I have. Thunder is worth more to me than money." Frank Peterson, who owned the local hardware store, stepped forward. "Franklin, are you sure about this? That's an awful lot of money." Franklin nodded solemnly. "I've never been more certain of anything in my life." Within hours, news of Franklin's unprecedented offer had spread far beyond Crystal Valley. Television crews arrived from Kansas City and Denver. Treasure hunters, horse experts, and fortune seekers descended on the area. The quiet rural community found itself thrust into a media circus. At the Shady Grove Mobile Park, Pilar Sandoval watched the evening news with growing amazement. The reward amount was more money than she could comprehend. $50 million, she whispered to Natalyia, who was sitting on the floor playing with their aging, mixed-breed dog, Bella. "Can you imagine, Mika?" Natalyia looked up. "The horse must be very scared, Abuela. All those strangers looking for him will make him hide even deeper." Pilar studied her granddaughter's serious expression. "Perhaps you're right, Mika," Pilar agreed. "Sometimes too much attention can make a problem worse." That night, as professional search teams set up base camps around Crystal Valley and helicopters prepared for aerial sweeps at dawn, Natalyia lay in her narrow bed, listening to the sounds of the recovery effort. But Natalya's thoughts weren't focused on the 50 million reward or the excitement consuming the valley. Instead, she found herself thinking about a frightened horse hiding somewhere in the vast wilderness. Rolling over to look out her small window at the star-filled sky, Natalyia made a quiet promise to herself. Tomorrow, while everyone else continued their noisy, complicated search, she would begin her own quiet investigation. Not for the money, but because somewhere out there, a beautiful animal needed help. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. The morning sun cast long shadows across Shady Grove Mobile Park as Natalyia slipped quietly out of her grandmother's trailer. It was barely 6, and the search teams wouldn't begin their operations for another 2 hours. She had dressed in her oldest jeans and a faded green t-shirt. Bella, their elderly dog, lifted her head. "Not this time, girl," Natalyia whispered, kneeling to scratch behind Bella's ears. "You're too old for long walks in rough country." The dog seemed to understand, settling back down with a contented sigh. Natalya's first stop was the Cooper Ranch. The main gate stood open, with television trucks and emergency vehicles parked along the gravel drive. She slipped through the chaos, unnoticed. Salvador Ortiz stood near the main barn, giving directions to a crew of volunteers. "Excuse me, sir," Natalyia said softly, approaching when the volunteers had dispersed. Salvador looked down, surprised to see a child among the searchers. "What are you doing here, little one? This isn't a safe place for kids right now." "I want to help find Thunder," Natalyia replied with quiet determination. "My grandmother works for Mr. Cooper sometimes, cleaning the house. I know about horses." Salvador's expression softened slightly. "What's your grandmother's name?" he asked. Pilar Sandival. She comes here twice a week. Ah, yes. Pilar is a good woman, very thorough in her work. Salvador glanced around. What exactly do you want to know about Thunder? Natalyia pulled a small notebook from her pocket. What makes him happy? What scares him? Where does he go when he wants to be alone? These weren't the questions Salvador had been hearing from the professional search teams. This child was asking about Thunder's personality, his emotional needs. Thunder is different from other horses, Salvador began thoughtfully. Mrs. Cooper spent years training him, but it was more like she was talking with him than commanding him. He's incredibly intelligent, maybe too intelligent for his own good sometimes. Natalyia wrote carefully in her notebook. Does he trust strangers? Not easily. It took me 3 months to get him comfortable with me, and I work with horses every day. Salvador paused. But once Thunder accepts you, he's loyal beyond measure. Mrs. Cooper used to say he could read her moods better than most people. Where did he spend time with Mrs. Cooper? Special places, I mean. Salvador pointed toward the northern edge of the ranch property. There's an old cottonwood grove about 2 miles that way. She used to take him there for training sessions. Said the quiet helped him concentrate. And beyond that, near Sunset Bluff Canyon, there are some natural springs where they'd rest during hot weather. Natalyia made detailed notes. Did Thunder ever get lost before? Never. That horse has an internal compass better than most GPS units. Mr. Cooper always said Thunder could find his way home from anywhere in the county. Salvador's brow furrowed. That's what makes this so strange. Thunder should have come back by now, unless something's preventing him. After thanking Salvador, Natalyia made her way to the Cottonwood Grove. The walk took her 45 minutes. The grove consisted of 6 ancient trees surrounding a small clearing. Evidence of regular visits was obvious. Worn patches where a large horse had stood, dried manure, and deep hoof prints. Natalyia knelt beside the clearest set of prints. Thunder had definitely been here, but the tracks led away toward increasingly rocky ground, where they became impossible to follow. Sound caught her attention, the distant rumble of approaching vehicles. Through the trees, she could see a convoy of search vehicles heading in her direction. Natalyia quickly gathered her things and moved toward higher ground. From her concealed position on a small hill, she watched as Kevin Wood and his team arrived at the grove. The trail goes cold here, she heard Kevin tell his assistant. The ground's too rocky beyond this point. Natalyia waited until the search team moved on before emerging from her hiding place. Following the rocky terrain where Kevin's team had given up, Natalyia discovered something they had missed. A single black hair caught on a thorny bush at the entrance to a narrow deer trail. The path was barely 2 feet wide, winding between boulders and scrub brush toward the base of Sunset Bluff Canyon. The deer trail required careful navigation. After 2 hours of painstaking progress, the trail opened onto a narrow ledge overlooking the canyon floor. Far below, Crystal Creek wound through the rocky gorge. Then she noticed something that made her heart race with excitement. Partially hidden by an overhang about 20 feet below the ledge, there appeared to be the entrance to a cave system. The opening was large enough for a horse, but invisible from above. Natalyia lay flat on her stomach, peering down at the cave entrance. As she considered her options, voices carried up from the canyon floor. Another search party was working its way along the creek bed. Natalyia quickly moved back from the ledge. The hike back to town took her 3 hours. By the time she reached Shady Grove Mobile Park, the afternoon sun was beating down mercilessly and her legs ached. Pilar was waiting on the front steps, her face creased with worry. "Mika, where have you been? I've been calling your name for an hour." "I went for a walk, Abuela. I needed to think about something." Pilar studied her granddaughter's dusty clothes and flushed face. "This was more than a walk. You've been gone since dawn." Natalyia sat beside her grandmother, pulling out her notebook. "I think I know where Thunder might be hiding." "Natalyia," Pilar said gently, "there are professional searchers with years of experience and expensive equipment. What makes you think—" "Because they're thinking like people, not like a scared horse," Natalyia interrupted. "Thunder doesn't want to be found by strangers. He's hiding somewhere safe, waiting for someone he trusts." Pilar looked at the detailed notes and sketches in Natalya's notebook. "You found all this by yourself?" "Animals leave signs if you know how to look," Natalyia replied. "Thunder is smart enough to find shelter, but scared enough to pick somewhere no one would think to search. Even if you're right, how would we reach this cave? You said it requires climbing." Natalyia had been thinking about this problem all afternoon. "Danny has rock climbing equipment. I've seen it in his garage when he works on cars." Danny Martinez, Pilar's nephew, was 32 years old and worked as a mechanic in town. That evening, Natalyia and Pilar walked to Danny's small house. As Natalyia spoke, Danny's expression grew more serious. "You're certain about this cave location?" he asked. "I saw it with my own eyes. The entrance is hidden unless you know exactly where to look, and there are fresh hoof prints leading to the edge above it." Danny studied the sketches more carefully. "Even if you're right," Danny said slowly, "reaching that cave would be extremely dangerous. The rock face is unstable, especially after heavy rain." "But you could do it," Natalyia said. "Let me sleep on it," Danny replied. "If I decide to check this cave, it won't be as some treasure-hunting expedition. It'll be because a scared animal might need help." As they walked home, Pilar placed her hand on Natalya's shoulder. "You realize, Mika, that even if you're right about Thunder's location, convincing the adults to listen won't be easy." "But we have to try, Abuela," Natalyia said. "Sometimes the right thing to do isn't the easy thing to do." That night, while professional search teams planned their expanded operations for the following day, Natalyia lay in bed visualizing the hidden cave entrance and the frightened stallion. Danny Martinez arrived at Pilar's trailer before sunrise, his climbing gear loaded in the back of his pickup truck. "You sure about this, Mika?" Pilar asked as Natalyia laced up her hiking boots. "Thunder needs help, Abuela. I can feel it." Danny loaded water bottles and emergency supplies into his backpack, checking his climbing rope and safety harnesses twice. "We stick to the plan," Danny told Natalyia as they drove toward the ranch property. "You show me the location. I make the descent to check the cave, and if Thunder is there, we contact the professionals immediately. No heroics." The morning air was crisp and clear as they parked at the base of the hills leading to Sunset Bluff. Professional search teams were already visible in the distance. Helicopters circled overhead. "This way," Natalyia said, leading Danny along the deer trail she had discovered the day before. The path was even more treacherous than she remembered. Danny followed carefully, impressed, despite himself, by Natalya's ability to navigate the difficult terrain. "How did you even find this trail?" he asked as they paused to rest halfway up the slope. "I watched where the search team stopped looking," Natalyia replied, wiping sweat from her forehead. "Then I kept going." When they reached the cliff edge overlooking the canyon, Danny immediately understood why the professional searchers had missed this location. The cave entrance was completely invisible from any conventional search angle, hidden beneath an overhang that created a natural blind spot. "Jesus," Danny whispered, lying flat to peer over the edge. "You actually spotted that from up here?" "I almost missed it too," Natalyia admitted. "The sun hit it just right for maybe 30 seconds. Danny studied the rock formation with practiced eyes. The descent would be challenging but manageable for someone with his experience. The helicopter's rotor noise grew louder as Danny positioned himself for the final swing toward the cave. He would have one chance to reach the entrance before the aircraft passed overhead. With a powerful push off the rock face, Danny swung out over empty space, his momentum carrying him directly toward the dark opening. He managed to grab the edge of the cave entrance just as the helicopter thundered past. Inside the cave, Danny's eyes needed several seconds to adjust to the darkness. When they did, he found himself looking at exactly what Natalyia had predicted. Thunder stood at the back of the cave, magnificent, even in his current condition. "Easy, boy," Danny said softly, remaining motionless near the cave entrance. "I'm here to help." Thunder's ears pricked forward at the sound of a human voice, but he didn't retreat further into the cave. Instead, the stallion took a tentative step forward, nickering softly. His intelligent eyes seemed to evaluate Danny, searching for signs of threat or safety. Instead of using the radio, Danny carefully positioned himself at the cave entrance and called up to Natalyia using hand signals. He pointed toward the interior of the cave, then made a thumbs-up gesture to indicate Thunder's presence and condition. From her position on the cliff above, Natalyia felt a surge of triumph mixed with new concern. Thunder was alive and safe, but getting him out of the cave would require careful planning. Danny spent 20 minutes in the cave, allowing Thunder to become accustomed to his presence. Gradually, the stallion relaxed enough to accept small pieces of apple that Danny had brought as emergency rations. When Danny finally climbed back up to join Natalyia, his expression was serious. "He's there, and he's in decent condition, considering everything he's been through. But we have a major problem." "What kind of problem?" "Thunder is absolutely terrified of anything electronic. Radios, engines, helicopters. The constant search activity has him spooked worse than any horse I've ever seen. If we bring in the professional rescue teams with all their equipment and noise, he might panic and hurt himself trying to escape deeper into the cave system." Natalyia had been thinking about this exact issue during Danny's descent. "What if we could get him to come out on his own? How would we do that with someone he trusts? Mr. Cooper?" Danny shook his head. "Franklin Cooper is 58 years old, hasn't done any physical labor in decades. He couldn't make that descent, and even if he could, climbing back up with an injured or panicked horse would be impossible." "Then we bring Thunder up to Mr. Cooper." "Natalyia, that horse weighs over 1,000 LRBs. We can't just haul him up a cliff face with climbing ropes." "No, but maybe there's another way out of that cave system. You said it extends back into the cliff. What if it connects to other caves or comes out somewhere else?" Danny considered this possibility. That would require a full spelunking expedition to map the cave system, Danny said. We're talking about days of exploration with proper equipment. Or, Natalyia said quietly, we could ask Thunder to show us. Danny stared at her. Ask the horse to show us? Horses don't give guided tours of cave systems. This horse does things other horses don't do. Salvador told me Thunder has an internal compass better than GPS. What if he already knows how the caves connect? What if that's how he got down there in the first place? The idea seemed impossible, but Danny had learned during his military service that impossible solutions sometimes worked when conventional approaches failed. Even if you're right, how would we communicate with him? We can't exactly ask him to draw us a map. Natalyia was quiet for several minutes. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a conviction that surprised Danny. I need to go down there and talk to him. Absolutely not. That descent is dangerous enough for an experienced climber. I won't risk a child's life on a theory about horse communication. It's not a theory, Danny. Animals understand more than people think they do. Thunder isn't just hiding. He's waiting for someone who won't hurt him to find him. Someone small and quiet, who won't scare him with loud noises and machines. Before Danny could respond, the sound of approaching vehicles echoed up from the valley below. A convoy of search trucks was heading directly toward their location. We're out of time, Natalyia said urgently. In 10 minutes, this place will be crawling with searchers, and Thunder will go deeper into the caves where no one will ever find him. Danny looked between the approaching vehicles and the cave entrance below, realizing that Natalyia was probably right. If I let you make that descent, Danny said slowly, you follow my instructions exactly. No improvisation, no taking risks I haven't approved. Natalyia nodded solemnly. I understand. And if Thunder shows any sign of aggression or panic, you get out immediately. He won't hurt me. How can you be so certain? Natalyia looked down at the hidden cave entrance. Because he's been waiting for someone like me to find him. Someone who understands what it's like to be small and overlooked, but still have something important to offer. As the search convoy drew closer, Danny began preparing a second set of climbing gear, sized for Natalyia's small frame. Okay, he said, checking the smaller harness twice. Let's go talk to a horse. The smaller climbing harness felt strange around Natalyia's waist as Danny made final adjustments. Below them, the convoy of search vehicles had stopped at the base of the trail. Remember, if Thunder seems agitated or dangerous, you signal me immediately, Danny said, checking the rope tension one last time. I can have you back up here in 30 seconds. Natalyia nodded, her mouth dry with nervousness, but her resolve unwavering. The descent began smoothly, with Danny controlling the rope from above as Natalyia rappelled down the cliff face. 20 feet down felt like 100, but gradually the cave entrance grew larger until she could see inside its shadowy depths. Thunder, she called softly as she swung toward the opening. It's okay, boy. I'm here to help you get home. The stallion's head appeared at the cave entrance almost immediately, his dark eyes fixed on this new visitor. Thunder nickered softly, a sound that seemed more curious than frightened. Natalyia managed to catch the edge of the cave entrance and pull herself inside. Hello, beautiful, she whispered, remaining motionless near the cave mouth. The stallion took several tentative steps forward, his nostrils flaring as he caught her scent. Unlike his reaction to Danny's radio, Thunder showed no signs of panic or retreat. Instead, he seemed genuinely curious about this small human. Natalyia slowly reached into her pocket and pulled out an apple. She held it out on her open palm. Thunder approached carefully, stretching his neck to sniff the apple before gently taking it from her hand. "The whole world is looking for you," Natalyia said conversationally. "Mr. Cooper is so worried. He misses you terribly." At the mention of Franklin's name, Thunder's ears pricked forward with obvious recognition. He moved closer to Natalyia, lowering his head until she could touch his neck. "You're smart enough to survive down here, but you can't stay forever," Natalyia continued, gently stroking Thunder's neck. "The search teams are getting closer, and they're going to bring lots of noise and scary equipment. We need to find another way to get you home." Thunder seemed to be listening intently. When she mentioned the search teams, his head lifted and his ears swiveled toward the cave entrance. "You know these caves, don't you?" Natalyia asked, studying Thunder's reaction. "You didn't just fall down here accidentally. You found this place because you knew it was safe." In response to her words, Thunder turned and walked deeper into the cave, then looked back at Natalyia as if inviting her to follow. Natalyia pulled a small flashlight from her pocket and followed Thunder into the depths of the cave system. The passage opened into a larger chamber where the underground stream flowed through a natural channel carved into the rock floor. Thunder had clearly been using this area as his main living space. At the far end of the chamber, another passage led deeper into the cliff face. Thunder walked directly to this opening and stood beside it, looking back at Natalyia. "There's another way out, isn't there?" Natalyia asked, approaching the passage entrance. "You want to show me where it goes?" Thunder whinnied softly and stepped into the passage, moving slowly to ensure Natalyia could follow safely. They moved through the underground system for what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes. Thunder navigated the passages with complete confidence. Finally, after what Natalyia estimated was nearly half a mile of underground travel, she began to notice changes in the air quality and temperature. Fresh air was flowing through the passage, carrying scents of grass and wildflowers. Thunder's pace quickened as they approached what was obviously an exit. The passage opened into a small canyon that Natalyia didn't recognize, completely hidden from view of the main search areas. Sunlight streamed down through the narrow opening above, illuminating a natural corral surrounded by high rock walls. "This is incredible," Natalyia breathed, looking around at Thunder's secret refuge. "You could live here forever, and no one would ever find you." But Thunder didn't seem interested in staying hidden forever. He walked to the far end of the small canyon where a narrow path led up through a crack in the rock walls. The route was steep and would require careful climbing, but it was definitely possible for both horse and human. Following Thunder up the path, Natalyia emerged onto a hillside that she recognized as being only about 2 miles from the Cooper Ranch house. They had traveled underground from Sunset Bluff Canyon to a location much closer to civilization, using a route that no professional searcher would ever have discovered. "You're not lost at all," Natalyia realized, looking at Thunder with new understanding. "You've been hiding on purpose, waiting for the right moment to come home." Thunder nickered and rubbed his head against her shoulder. From their position on the hillside, Natalyia could see the Cooper Ranch buildings in the distance. She could also see the massive search operation spread across the valley. "We need to get word to Mr. Cooper," she told Thunder. "But first, We need to get you someplace safe where all that noise and commotion won't scare you." Thunder seemed to understand the problem. He looked toward the distant ranch buildings, then back at the hidden canyon entrance they had emerged from. They had traveled about a mile when Thunder suddenly stopped and raised his head, ears alert to some sound Natalyia couldn't detect. A moment later, she heard it too. The distinctive rumble of Franklin Cooper's pickup truck approaching along a dirt road. Thunder whinnied loudly, a sound of recognition and joy. In the distance, the pickup truck stopped abruptly. Natalyia could see Franklin getting out of the vehicle, shading his eyes. "Thunder?" Franklin's voice carried clearly through the morning air. "Thunder, is that really you?" The stallion answered with another whinny and began picking, his way down the slope toward the road. Natalyia followed, her excitement building. Franklin stood beside his truck in obvious disbelief, watching his beloved horse emerge from terrain that had been searched repeatedly over the past week. When Thunder reached the road, the reunion was everything Natalyia had hoped it would be. Man and horse came together with an emotional intensity that brought tears to her eyes. "I thought I'd lost you forever," Franklin whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Where have you been, boy? How did you survive out there?" It was then that Franklin noticed Natalyia standing quietly nearby, dusty and tired from their underground journey. "Pilar's granddaughter," he said, recognition dawning. Where did you find him?" "He found me, Mr. Cooper," Natalyia replied honestly. "Thunder's been taking care of himself just fine. He was just waiting for the right time to come home." Franklin looked between the girl and his horse, beginning to comprehend that this reunion was not the result of chance or luck, but of something far more remarkable. Thunder had chosen to trust this child in a way he had trusted no other rescuer. "We need to call off the search," Franklin said, reaching for his phone. "Everyone's been looking for Thunder in the wrong places." "Maybe we should get him home first," Natalyia suggested. "Away from all the noise and excitement. He's been scared by all the helicopters and search equipment." Franklin nodded, understanding immediately. He opened his truck's tailgate and lowered the loading ramp he used for transporting horses. Thunder walked into the trailer without hesitation, clearly ready to return to familiar surroundings. As they drove toward the ranch house, Franklin kept glancing in his rearview mirror at Natalyia, who had insisted on riding in the truck bed to stay close to Thunder. The girl had accomplished something that dozens of professionals with millions of dollars worth of equipment had failed to achieve. The Cooper Ranch erupted in controlled chaos as Franklin's pickup truck pulled through the main gate with Thunder safely loaded in the trailer. Salvador Ortiz was the first to spot them, his weathered face breaking into a grin of pure relief. "Thunder's back!" Salvador shouted, his voice carrying across the yard. "Mr. Cooper found him!" Within minutes, news of Thunder's return spread throughout the search operation. Radio chatter crackled with updates as team leaders recalled their units. Helicopters changed course toward the Cooper Ranch. Franklin parked near the main barn, his hands still trembling slightly. In the truck bed, Natalyia sat quietly beside Thunder's trailer, stroking the stallion's nose. Dr. Kathleen Gray arrived within 10 minutes of Franklin's call, her veterinary equipment loaded in the back of her SUV. "Let's get him unloaded and into the quiet barn," Dr. Gray suggested, recognizing Thunder's skittish behavior. "He needs a thorough examination, but away from all this excitement." Natalyia climbed down from the truck bed as Franklin lowered the trailer ramp. Thunder stepped out cautiously. "He's been through a lot," Natalyia told Dr. Gray quietly. Underground caves, narrow passages, not much food, but he's stronger than he looks. Dr. Gray glanced at the girl with surprise. You were with him? How did you— Long story, Franklin interrupted, though his tone was gentle. Right now, let's focus on making sure Thunder is healthy. In the quiet barn, away from the growing crowd, Dr. Gray conducted her examination while Natalyia stood at Thunder's head, keeping him calm. Dehydration is mild, probably from stress rather than lack of water, Dr. Gray reported. Some minor cuts and scrapes, likely from rough terrain. Overall, he's in remarkably good condition for what he's been through. He had access to fresh water and found ways to forage. Natalyia explained Thunder's smarter than people realize, Franklin added. He took care of himself. While Dr. Gray completed her examination, Sheriff Paula Griffin arrived to document the successful conclusion of the search operation. Franklin, I need to understand exactly how Thunder was found, Sheriff Griffin said, pulling out her notebook. The search teams are saying a child was involved. Franklin looked at Natalyia. This is Natalyia Ramos. She's the one who located Thunder and brought him home. Sheriff Griffin's eyebrows rose skeptically. An 11-year-old girl succeeded where professional search teams failed. That's exactly what happened, Franklin replied firmly. I don't fully understand it myself, but Natalyia found Thunder in a place no one else thought to look. Before Sheriff Griffin could ask more questions, the barn doors opened and Danny Martinez entered, looking exhausted and worried. Natalyia! Danny called, relief evident in his voice. Are you okay? I'm fine, Danny, Natalyia assured him. Thunder showed me the way home. Danny approached, the group nodding respectfully to Franklin and Dr. Gray. Mr. Cooper, I want you to know that your granddaughter— She's not my granddaughter, Franklin corrected gently. Natalyia is Pilar Sandoval's granddaughter. Pilar works for me occasionally. Right, Danny continued. Well, she's the bravest person I've ever met. She climbed down a cliff face into an unstable cave to reach Thunder when professional teams couldn't figure out how to approach him safely. Sheriff Griffin's expression shifted from skepticism to amazement. She actually climbed down into a cave? How is that even possible? Thunder was trapped in a cave system below Sunset Bluff Canyon, Danny explained. The entrance was hidden and could only be reached by technical climbing. Natalyia convinced me to help her make the descent. That was incredibly dangerous, Dr. Gray said, looking at Natalyia with new respect. You could have been seriously injured or killed. Thunder needed help, Natalyia replied simply. He was scared and couldn't get out on his own. Franklin listened to this exchange with growing wonder. Over the next 20 minutes, while Dr. Gray completed Thunder's examination, Natalyia described her encounter with the stallion. She explained how Thunder had guided her through the underground cave system, showing her an alternate route that emerged near the ranch. He wasn't lost, Natalyia emphasized. Thunder knew exactly where he was the whole time. He was hiding from all the noise and confusion, waiting for someone quiet who wouldn't scare him. You're saying Thunder deliberately led you through those caves?